All right, hello everyone. My name is Steve Jane. I want to welcome you to this week's growth call. We host these growth calls every week at this time on Thursdays to talk about how Bisq has been doing and what we can do to help the Bisq network grow. For those of you, if this is your first growth call, welcome. If you're new to Bisq, we like to talk about Bisq as the only true decentralized Bitcoin exchange where you can trade Bitcoin for national currencies or Bitcoin for other cryptocurrencies without losing control of your funds, staying completely private, and without trusting any central servers or companies. There's a Hangouts link in the YouTube chat if you would like to join us here in the Hangout. Otherwise, you can post your comments in the chat, in the YouTube chat, and we will respond as we can. Today we've got Manfred, we've got Christoph, and Nyman. Our host actually for this week is Nyman. Hello, everybody. And I guess I'll turn it over to Nyman now to go over the rest of the call. Welcome, Nyman.
Hey, thank you. Good evening, and thanks for handing me the rest of the call. I think our topic today, which is the dispute resolution system. And the reason that it was given to me is because I helped Manfred to design the new dispute resolution system. And now I help one of the developers, Craig Saylor, to implement the design of the new system. And also the design, as always, changes while we implement. I don't know how many Bisq users notice the dispute resolution system that we have, or even think why we need it, because sometimes in a blockchain world like Bitcoin, the deals that you made are so finite and the rules are so absolute that you don't need any dispute resolution system because there are no mistakes to be done. However, for Bisq, a dispute resolution system is something that we need, not necessarily something that we want, something that we need. Because I think ideally, in a science fiction implementation of Bisq, I don't know, 5 years in the future, we would have, or a year in the future, don't want to say any timeline, we would have atomic swaps between cryptocurrencies. So then there will be no dispute. Everything will happen automatically and immediately. Or if you go to even more science fiction future where banks gives you API for your account, you can even do atomic swaps with fiat. And I don't know if it will ever happen, probably not, but this is like ideally. But practically, Bisq helps you to find people to do over-the-counter trades with in the internet. There is a Bisq protocol to follow, and the protocol is built in a way that both sides should follow it. The Bisq software push them to follow it, and there are lots of incentives to follow it, but still sometimes, even to human errors, it may happen that one of the sides don't follow the protocol. And the dispute resolution comes to, one, avoid those misunderstandings. So a way where people who have a dispute, not even intentionally, could find a solution and solve the dispute. And B, such that if a dispute happens intentionally, so there is some kind of attacker or a scammer, the dispute resolution will make sure that the honest trader is not get harmed. What we have now is arbitration system. We are going to speak about it in a second with the help of Manfred. And this is a simple solution. I would say almost naive, not in a bad way, but it's very simple. And it was good for the time that it was made, but I think that two things changed recently, which means that we can improve it, not change it, but improve it. One of the things is that Bisq got more popular. That's a very good thing, but the arbitrator system is not so easy to scale. The other thing is that we are going to have the DAO. So we have now another tool which gives a new option to improve the dispute resolution system. I wasn't with Bisq from the beginning, so actually I don't know. Manfred, was the current system was the original one?
Yeah, it was the original one. There was always as the arbitration system was from beginning kind of like a pain painful addition what we need to make it working, the Bisq system. Initially, I wanted to start with a 2 of 2 multisig, but yeah, that turned out to have a security risk, and the arbitration system was kind of the solution. But it introduced a kind like a little bit of centralized trust-based entity, the arbitrator, and we always tried to find a solution to distribute this, to make it more decentralized, by having a group of arbitrators, by having maybe bonded arbitrators and so on. But it was never 100% clear how to build it exactly. They were never the perfect solution out there, and we never had the dev resources to really implement those follow-up concepts. So basically, the arbitration system is the same like from day one when we launched 2.5 years ago. And luckily now with the DAO, we have the possibility to really change it in a way that we become fully decentralized on that area as well, and remove this trusted element.
Yeah, I mean, for people who don't know exactly the arbitrator system, I'm not going to go into the details because what we want to speak today is the improvements of this system. But right now, in a typical Bisq trade, both sides agree before the trade is made. They agree on an arbitrator that they can go to in case of a dispute, and the arbitrator gets kind of participation in the multisig with the traders. As I said, it is quite naive. There is also a problem of finding arbitrators, keeping them anonymous. So I don't know who are the current arbitrators, to be honest, and I'm very happy not to know. And an arbitrator is right now a job which, for someone to do it, he needs to put a high bond, because the risk of being a bad arbitrator is a bit too big. And the idea of the new system, which we are going to speak about in a second, is to make it, to add another role. It's called a mediator, which is a bit less powerful than the arbitrator. So you can have more people doing that. You can have people do it in different languages, which is something that right now we hardly have. And add another, and then let the DAO come in to risk the cases where the mediators cannot solve. We are still leaving the arbitrators. So for people who like the system, they can, I mean, it's a personal choice. You can still keep on using it. But we would try to convince people to go to the more scalable system, which we don't think is much less safe. I think, Manfred, that right now in the new system, we add two elements, right? The first element is that users will be able to communicate, so traders will be able to communicate with each other in case of a dispute. Am I correct?
Yes, that's old feature request what users asked from the very beginning, and for various reasons. One reason is just lack of dev resources. We never implemented it. And there, as when I've been arbitrator, I know that most of the cases can be resolved by their users themselves, because I mean the word dispute resolution or dispute is already wrong. It's actually customer care. I mean 99% are just problems either with bank transfers or with altcoin transfers or bugs in the software, usability problems. People are pasting in the wrong receiving address of the altcoin or something like this. And basically nearly no scam attempts. Maybe we had, you can count it on one hand, maybe the cases where maybe they tried to do a scam attempt. It was never really clear. But yeah, it's usually not really a dispute. It's just they need more help, the software alone, or yeah, it's somehow they get stuck in a trade protocol. And the first step would be that they are getting in touch with each other and then can ask, hey, what's going on? I'm waiting for your money now. I've sent it, but maybe the message was lost and you never received the message, and everything is resolved and they can quickly go on and complete it. So it helps to speed up the process, because the arbitrate is not all day online, usually once a day or so. And the worst time, in the worst event, you are waiting 20 hours to get a response from the arbitrator, and then he needs to contact the other trader. So you lose much more time with the arbitration system. Can be much faster when the traders are contacted each other directly. And and also for privacy, there's no third party who can become aware of the trade. It's really just the traders know about the trade, nobody else. And I think 80% of the cases can be resolved by the traders just with benefits, without any problems. And there was always a little bit of concern that people can abuse this for sending malware links or whatever, or trying to convince the other user to make a trade outside of Bisq and then scam the users. So such stuff happen on local Bitcoin and other platforms. But because all the communication is inside of Bisq, the same system like we use for the arbitration system, so every message is signed. So when the other user tries to do something scammy in this communication, the other peer always can open then the next step, the mediator, and can show this and can prove this, that the other user has done some stuff which is not allowed, and that can lead then that the other user is losing his security deposit. So it's probably not a real risk.
Yeah, so the first step is something which we could have added before. It's a matter of development resources. We add it now, and basically it means that if you have a problem, the first thing you do is let's talk about it, which is a very normal human thing to do. Before you go to court, you try to reach a compromise on your own. It's about time to edit. It's very good to edit, and I think that lots of the customer support issues that we have, which I don't know how much there was, I think a small percentage, will be solved by that. But then once this did not work out, we can go to the other solution, which we are going to add, which is the mediators. And the name of arbitrator and mediators are a bit similar. There are maybe two big differences between them. One is that the mediator has less power than the arbitrator. The arbitrator right now, the arbitrator cannot decide the fate of a trade on its own, but the arbitrator on one of the sides can. So this is the enforcement power that the arbitrator gets before the deal is made by the parties to make a decision in case of a dispute. A mediator won't have this power. In case of a mediator, we will speak about the process, I think, in 2 minutes. In case of the mediators, what it can do is can make a recommendation for the DAO, and the DAO can take a bit more action to solve it, not to finish disputes. So the mediator is less strong than the arbitrators. Other than that, the mediator will do the same thing that the arbitrator do, which is speak with both sides, go over the process, tries to solve things, and let the sides make their own, implement the solution. One improvement of a mediator, which is technical, but for me it's quite important because I like privacy, is that right now in a deal in which an arbitrator is involved, it may be possible to see traces of this deal on the Bitcoin blockchain because you would have the fingerprint of the arbitrator. With a mediator, in a deal which a mediator is involved, you will not be able at all to see on the Bitcoin blockchain, which adds a small but for me important layer of privacy.
Yes.
Then, yeah. Sorry, Manfred.
Sorry. To add something to the different, as I think the role of an arbitrator has 3 functions. One is the customer care, just help people to find a solution. In the very rare cases where there's a real dispute that they are not agreeing, he's the judge. He tried to find a fair solution for both and make the decision who should get the money, basically. And the third role is that he's the executive who, with the third key in the 2 or 3 multisig, has the power with one of the traders to do the payout transaction. And this third, or the first 2 roles are still valid with the mediator. The mediator is a customer care, and when there's a real dispute, he can basically make a decision what he thinks is the fair outcome, but he has no power to enforce it. He has no key in the multisig, and he can only make then this suggestion to both traders, and when both traders are accepting it and agreeing to this outcome, the two traders are doing then the payout, but I don't want to talk too much there in advance.
Yeah, we're gonna get in a second. Maybe one thing that I could add, that it's better to solve a dispute with mediators, not with arbitrators. Arbitrators add some risk for the sides. adds another party. There is also the privacy issues. If you can do it with a mediator, it's better for everybody involved. And I think that the goal of this new edition that we do and how we are designing the protocol is that eventually, hopefully, everybody would use mediators. That's what we hope that we do. And the question is, how do you do that? Because right now, people trust the arbitrator system because the arbitration, as long as they are honest and as long as they are not compromised and as long as there are enough arbitrators, it's safe. Because they have some kind of power to solve a dispute where at least one of the sides is honest. And we take away the power from the mediators, and the question is, what do we give instead? And the answer is a bit complicated. I would give Manfred the first effort to explain it, and then I will try myself the second effort to explain it, and hopefully it will be enough because it is not the most trivial solution.
Yeah, hopefully you can save the audience when I've confused them, hopelessly. So one thing is the first step when there is a mediation process and the mediator comes to a result that their buyer should get the trade amount and both should get back their security deposit, which is the normal resolution. Then both traders receive this statement from the mediator, and the application will display a button where do you agree to this payout that the other buyer get the trade amount and both get back their security deposit, for instance. It can be any distribution. That's the decision of the mediator, how he thinks it's the fairest way to make this payout transaction, but he has no power to do it. He only can make the suggestion to both parties. And when both parties click on this button, I agree to that, then both traders are signing the payout transaction exactly with this payout distribution, and everything is fine. It's basically the same like the traders would have completed the trade, and yeah, depending, I mean, when it's an alternative, a different payout resolution, it would be a different outcome. In the normal trade protocol, it's only possible to do it the way that the buyer get the Bitcoin amount. But here now everything is possible. But when both agreeing and both see, okay, I made a mistake, I was not paying in time, or I should lose my security deposit to the other trader because he lost time. And when both are fair and understand this, everything is fine.
Yeah, so far, what we describe is really similar to the arbitration system, right? I mean, you had a problem, you go to somebody, whether it's a mediator or an arbitrator, this person communicate with both sides and made some kind of judgment decision.
Exactly.
Then the question, if both sides agree to this decision, it's all good. They just agree, they make the payout transaction, and the process is over. The question is, what happens if they don't agree, right?
Yeah, exactly. In the case when they don't agree, the next step is, so when one creates an offer, as the maker, he can define when creating the offer if he wants to have the option to use the arbitration system. When he opt in for doing this, in the beginning there will be 0 fee for this. Later we want to add some fee because we want to motivate people to not use the arbitration system anymore, because at the end we want to get rid of it when users agree and when we see that nobody's using it anymore.
I think maybe the most important detail here, this is something that you have to decide before the deal.
Yeah, and the maker is the one who is deciding this. And when somebody takes an offer, he will see, okay, that's an offer with arbitration. And when I'm taking this, at some point there will be extra fee for this, at the beginning not. But they will, either the trade is a trade which has the option to go to arbitration or not. In the case when they have made such a offer with the option for arbitration, after the mediator, when they cannot agree and they have a real dispute and everybody thinks he's on the right side, then they ask them arbitrate, then it's exactly the same like now. Then it goes the same. It goes the same process like with the mediator. The arbitrator get all the data. They need to explain again. The arbitrator have a second look, and that was actually in the very early concepts always an idea to have basically a second round, like a Supreme Court for arbitration. And now it's in a way that the mediator is this first round, and when the users still don't agree to the outcome of the mediator, then the arbitrator will have a second look will investigate, completely independent, and he makes then a decision. And then there is no, it's like now, the traders have to accept the decision.
People choose an arbitrator, basically they can appeal. So
yeah.
The second round, you can appeal on a decision of a mediator.
Yeah, exactly. Also that's, and then it's basically over. And also then it's exactly the same like now. It's just additionally, before it goes to arbitration, you have 2 extra steps. First, that the traders can communicate directly. They don't need to. When one trader says, no, I don't want, this guy is so weird or whatever, I don't want to talk with him, he don't need to communicate. Then anybody can open a request for mediation at any time. Yeah, and then it goes to the mediator, and only the third round will be then the arbitrator. And I assume, from my experience as arbitrator, that, as said, I think 80% or more can be resolved by the traders. Maybe 20% requires help from a third party, maybe more for technical reasons when both traders don't understand the system well and have some problems or some bugs. And then very, very few cases where there's a real dispute, where they still don't agree after their discussion with the mediator. And I think that might be something like not even 1 case a month, I assume. And
yeah, now let's go to the process of pure mediators. So no arbitrators. The mediator made the suggestions, but both sides did not agree to it. What's happening next?
Yeah, so when the maker has made an offer with not using the arbitrator, then it's this other system where after the mediation, there will be a time-locked payout transaction. We have not explained this so far because it was not needed so far. But in the trade protocol, when the taker takes the offer, both users are creating together their deposit transaction, where all the funds, also the trade amount plus the security deposit from both traders, get locked into one multisig transaction. And additionally to the current concept, both traders create a time-locked payout transaction. This time lock will be, let's say, 1 month. It's not 100% decided yet, but it's a quite long period. And both decide, because in the DAO there will be in the DAO we can change certain parameters of the whole system, and one parameter is the donation address. And initially it will be probably the Bisq donation address, but that can be changed in DAO voting. So the stakeholders can define, maybe we use whatever from the Tor project, the donation address, to send the other money. And this time-locked payout transaction all the funds goes to this donation address. So for the traders, it's basically burned. So both traders cannot access this money anymore. And when Bisq donation address the receiver, it stays basically in the system of Bisq. So Bisq has a project received this amount. And then the next step is that both traders can request for a reimbursement from the DAO.
Let's maybe 1 second still stay in the first step. So the first step is, because I like to think about it in a similar thing to a Lightning network. In a Lightning network, you open a channel, but you also exchange transactions which are not being mined to Bitcoin. Maybe they will never be mined, but they, in case of a problem in the dispute in the channel, you can use those transactions. And that's the same thing that we do here. We decide, I mean, not we decide, the DAO is going to vote on some kind of donation address, which one possibility is the Tor organization, because we use Tor hidden services. It's fair. If we have donations, they will go to Tor. So the DAO will decide on a donation address. Then both traders will have not published transactions, which is signed by the other trader, that they could use to send the money in the deal to the Tor, to the donation transaction. But because we don't want people to do it immediately, we want it to be the last resort. We don't want people to do it panically. There's going to be some kind of delay. Where can you execute this transaction? So this delay maybe will be a month, maybe will be 2 weeks. Probably, I hope it will be a parameter of the DAO so that the community can decide how much they want to make a delay. before being able to donate the money. And once the money is donated, it means that in one way the deal is over, because the money went to the donation transaction, to Tor organization in this example. On another way, now the traders, the honest traders, the one who lost the money, they can go to the Bisq DAO and ask for some kind of compensation, right?
Exactly. It's a kind of like insurance model. So you suffered some loss because the money from the trade is lost for you, but you as a victim, maybe the other was a scammer and was the unfair guy, and you did everything correct. So of course you want to get reimbursed. And to enable this, you make a reimbursement request in BSQ. So when you lost maybe 1 Bitcoin, you convert this with the current market rate from BSQ to Bitcoin to the BSQ value. Let's say that's 5,000 BSQ. And then you make in the next cycle of the DAO voting, you make a reimbursement request, which is technically the same like a compensation request from all Bisq contributors who work on Bisq. They make every month a compensation request for earning BSQ. And in this case, because you got burned basically by a bad trader, by a scammer, and you want to get reimbursed from the DAO for this loss. And let's assume that the donation address is the Bisq donation address, then it stays basically in the system. And the BSQ stakeholders, they take their decision from the mediator. When the mediator basically came to the conclusion that you are the honest guy and the other was the scammer, then it's already a clear statement what the mediator as a judge basically has decided. The stakeholders don't need to investigate the case because that would be too complicated and you don't want to lose your privacy against all the stakeholders. They just take this decision from the mediator and use this as their basis for the voting. They don't need to accept it, but they don't have any reason why not to accept your reimbursement when you are the winner in their outcome.
Yeah, so
then you get...
In order to get reimbursement, first you need to donate the money which is disputed. That's one condition. Then you also need to get kind of a stamp from a mediator that it is his decision, a mediator which was selected by the DAO, by the Bisq DAO to decide on such things, that he recommends that you will get the money. So this is the second condition, right?
Yeah, the second condition is already a part of the mediation process. So you have to go to the mediation process anyway. And the result from the mediation process, it's already clear that one should get basically the money. And even if it's a case that the mediator cannot say who is the scammer, both have acted somehow weird, then it's also a statement. And maybe nobody gets reimbursed, whatever, but it will be very rare. I never had such a case when I was arbitrator. So the standard case, it's usually that one was the honest guy and the other tried to do whatever bullshit. And then theoretically, both can request this reimbursement, but it comes with some fee. So when they make this reimbursement request, they need to pay a fee. And for the scammer or for the dishonest user who is the loser, he has no motivation to make this reimbursement because the stakeholders, they very likely will not accept this request when they see that the mediator has decided that he shouldn't get the money. And then he's just losing additional money for the BSQ fee for doing this request and losing time. So we can expect that nearly all cases will be that only the honest person, the winner basically from the mediation process, will make the reimbursement, and then the stakeholders will accept it because they have no reason to not accept it. And he get basically the lost money from the trade as BSQ and can then sell the BSQ to Bitcoin and then has back basically the Bitcoin what he has lost.
Right. So the idea here is that you demotivate scammers because they have nothing to gain, but not only that they have nothing to gain, it will also cost them to cheat.
Yeah, exactly.
And then it's also a way if people just want to burn the system. Even this would not work because the honest trader will go to the Bisq organization and will ask for compensation in Bisq tokens. Right?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, to really understand it, as one thing which is important to keep in mind, this reimbursement, this last step with burning the money to sending to the Bisq donation address and then making the reimbursement should be very exceptional. And we the system has to avoid that this happens often. When we see that it happens 20 times a month, then we have a problem. We need to fix this problem. It should be very exceptional, maybe maximum once a month or even less. But just to have this in place guarantees us that another. Also, I have to step back a little bit. When there is no arbitration, then the trade protocol is using a 2 of 2 multisig instead of a 2 of 3 multisig. So when the two traders cannot come to a cooperative outcome that both are signing a payout transaction, then the money is locked forever. And that could be used for a blackmail scenario, because in the trade process, there's always, in one situation, one has more to lose like the other. Before the fiat has been transferred, the seller has more to lose because he has locked in his trade amount. After the fiat has been transferred, the buyer has to lose more because then the seller has received the fiat, and when he's basically not cooperating, the security deposit of the buyer is at risk. And so there's always an imbalance of the risk exposure, and the guy who has less to lose could use this as blackmail, and could abuse the system, and it would not be really secure, especially when it would be bigger scale, and when when people who are trying to abuse any weakness of the system will be more attracted to Bisq. That's luckily not the case now. To make this system secure, and that was the reason why we went away from the 2 of 2 multisig in the very early day, in the very first concept for BitSquare in this day. When I started, it was a pure 2 of 2 multisig, but it was the problem that it was not safe against this blackmail risk. And with the DAO now, and with this insurance or reimbursement model, we have a solution for this, because there is no incentive anymore for the victim to agree to any blackmail, because when there would be really the case that the other peer is blackmailing the other trader, that he's not cooperating and not doing the payout, then the other trader requests the reimbursement, and he knows he's the honest guy, he will get the money back, and the blackmailer will lose everything. And the reason why we need to add this burning is because otherwise it would be there would be a risk that we don't know who are the traders. They can be anonymous, especially with altcoins. So somebody could trade with himself with 2 entities, then claim, I got scammed by the other, he never responded, and so on, and then ask for reimbursement from the Bisq DAO. He got the money, and then after a week, he will send out the trade amount to himself and has received 2 times the money. To avoid this, we need basically to make sure that the money which was locked in the trade amount, or in the deposit transaction, is not available anymore for the trader. And with that, we are removing this risk that it can be abused.
Yeah, so I'm going to. I had a bit of experience in the last 2 months trying to explain this concept for a few people. So I'm going to say now something and then say kind of the opposite. First thing that I'm going to say, this is not what we offer is not an insurance. It's not an insurance because, as Manfred said, if 100 people now ask for compensation, then the Bisq DAO will probably not approve it. I mean, it's a community thing, but I think that probably not. The other thing is that the reason that we do here is that we do the whole process is not to compensate people for the losses, but it is to kind of balance the risks of both sides. Because if we don't do it, one side have less to lose. It can be the attacker side. If we do it, then the attacker has more to lose. So it balances the risk and balance the motivation. Then you have more motivation to be trusted.
To the first, I mean, insurance, depends a little bit on the definition. I don't know exactly the legal situation, but at least like with credit cards.
I don't like to call it insurance because of legal. It also puts insurance in people's mind is something where a crime happened, and this is not why we do it. We do it here to, I mean, from my point of view, to balance the motivation of both sides. But when I said what I'm going now to say the opposite is that it is easy to explain if you think about an insurance.
Yeah, so for me, it's a little bit, when you look back how it was with credit cards in the early days, it's a terrible, insecure system. and it's a wonder that it was so successful. But the main reason why it became successful was because they had this kind of insurance. When somebody stole your credit card, or the waiter, where he got all the number and your credit card in the hand, steal the money, then you got reimbursed by the credit card, and they were very tolerant and paid, and it was very easy for people to scam even. And that helped basically. And after time, and I think today it's much harder to get any reimbursement. They're much more strict, and I see it a little bit similar. I don't want to have any comparison with this completely flawed system, of course, but yeah, I think it's a kind of like a it gives the users their chance, which is not a 100% chance, because you also don't know when you get scammed with a credit card, it's not your fault. And even when your bank account get hacked, you have no guarantee that the bank or that the credit card company is covering the costs. But you get anyway. Maybe we should not extend this. It's probably really the wrong model to.
Yeah, I don't think it's the wrong model. I think it's something that helps people in the first stage just to think of what is the new model. So in the old model, there was no compensation because the arbitrator could have helped people to actually take action with the money. Now there is a compensation, and compensation is a word which is you don't always you don't use that often, but insurance is a word that you use often. So I understand what you mean. A crime happened, and then somebody compensate you, give you some part of the money. Yeah, reimburse you for the loss. That's exactly also why we have the donation mechanism here, because we want to prove that a crime indeed happened.
Exactly.
Until there is a donation, maybe no crime happened. We don't know if the money is locked now and will not be unlocked tomorrow. We want to prove that it happened, which is why the option only offered after a donation.
Yeah, I think the important focus is really that this more complicated aspect with reimbursement and with this burning of the trade amount and the money which was locked in, that this is only in place to avoid the blackmail and to make two multisig possible. Otherwise, it will not be secure. I think that's the real reason, and it's a little bit like we are using in the arbitration system TLS notary or page signer, where the arbitrator can request a page signed document from the bank account statement, and with that we have a tamper-proof, cryptographic secure proof that the bank transfer has happened or not. Without this, the arbitrator, there is no, you can send a screenshot that you have sent the money, but you can easily manipulate the screenshot in Photoshop. But with having the page signer technology available, we have a very strong, powerful tool. On the altcoin side, of course, it's much easier. You just look up the blockchain and you see if the transaction happened or not. That's why on the altcoin side, there's basically no scam opportunity at all, that one could say I've sent it and he has not sent it really. But in reality, it turned out that we nearly never needed this. It was just to keep out the scammers, that they don't even try it. And because they know, okay, when they try to scam, the arbitrator will ask for this, and then they cannot prove the statement, and they are the liar, and they have lost everything. So they have no motivation to even try it. And in reality, when I was arbitrator, I think it was 3 times that I used it, and even there, it was not really needed. It was just extra caution. And I think with this model for the reimbursement, it should be basically the same, that it just should enable that both traders are cooperative, because they know when they don't do it, they lose everything and they cannot win it and they cannot get it back. And this reimbursement and this process with burning their funds is only in place to enable to take away this risk from 2 of 2 multisig with the potential blackmail.
Okay, I would like maybe in the time that, sorry, Christopher.
Yeah, wanted to point out, I think that's the one thing that we have to communicate properly, because if I see the old arbitration system and the new mediation system, the mediation system just looks like the slower version of it. So I have to wait until the time block is gone, and then I have to make the reimbursement request, and then maybe 1 or 2 months later, I will have my reimbursement. But yeah, as you pointed out, Manfred, that these cases shouldn't happen at all, or will be very rare cases. So from a timing perspective, it will be the same. So it will probably be solved with mediators at the same time. And it will be, for me, the incentive as a user will be mainly that it's cheaper to do the mediation, use the pure mediation system than using the mediation with arbitration system.
Yeah, I think we have to.
I agree with Christoph. I think 1 second before we speak about the advantage of the mediation system, I think that's what we'll do. What we will do with the rest of the time. Where is the best place right now to read about the improved trading protocol?
Yeah, in our GitHub repository for proposals, also Bisq network/proposals, there is the proposal for the new trade protocol. And it started with the first discussions and it changed a little bit over time. And then at the end, there's a link to a Google Doc where it's kind of like a tech spec, which was the latest.
I have to edit soon.
Yeah, because this idea, earlier we wanted to kick out completely the arbitration system, and we found now a solution to support both in parallel. And that's not added yet in there, that's not updated, but I just added at least a comment that's missing. But yeah, here you can read up all the details. It's more or less for the developers and for finalizing the concept and getting all the details right. And beside this, I think this conversation is probably the first high-level overview about it. I mean, I think I mentioned it somewhere at some call, but that was still the older version. Yeah.
I would say right now, this conversation is a good beginning if you want to understand it. Probably the places to go to the GitHub issue, which discussed the improved dispute resolution system or the new trading protocol. Go to the doc, read there, and of course come to Slack and ask us because we love to discuss such things.
Yeah.
Then, then with the time that we have left is we can speak about the advantages of this mediator system. Or Christoph, did you want to say something?
Just one quick question, as Peter is asking in the chat a couple of questions, and I want to add something. So Peter is asking what percentage of the trade goes to the time lock transaction. Manfred, do I understand it correctly that the time lock is already part of the multi-sig transaction when the trade is initiated, or?
The time lock is an alternative or a payout transaction where all the funds of all what is in a multi-sig, that's the trade amount plus the security deposit of both, goes to the donation address. So all the money is lost, both traders lose all. That's basically why we call it also burning in a way. It's not burned really, it goes to the Bisq donation address, for instance.
And how is this triggered in the client? So do both parties have to trigger this time lock transaction, or is just one party able to trigger it? If one party, that next question, Peter's asking, what happens if one party is unresponsive?
Yeah. So the time lock transaction gets created at the take offer process. So both users have this transaction sitting in their wallet, and the UI, as soon as the time lock is over, as after 1 month, for instance, when we define the time lock, that will be editable in the DAO, so it can be changed in the DAO voting when we see it should be shorter or longer. After this time, the UI will display a button basically where I say when you want to do a reimbursement, you first have to basically make this transaction and publish. Both users can do this, and they cannot make a reimbursement request before they have done this because the stakeholders will not accept this, because then there would be this open risk that in reality it was a guy traded with himself, and then when he got reimbursed, he's taking out the money from the funds and he has received it 2 times. Also to make sure that we avoid this, the money has been spent, so the money is not accessible for anybody anymore, and then he get reimbursed. So both users can do this. Both have the power to go this extreme route that the money is lost and they have to request for reimbursement. And the motivation will be only for the honest guy, because the other way has basically no chance to win. So it would be pointless when he's basically the loser in the dispute resolution from the mediator, that this guy would make the reimbursement request. Yes, he's the honest guy will make it anyway because he thinks that he should get the money. And when both will do it, the loser will lose just additional fees and cannot win anything. And when one is not responding, which can happen, that maybe the main cases what we might have, that some people or whatever lost their crashed their computer and couldn't continue anymore, or they're just completely newbies and don't understand it, that they have to be online again. And then, yeah, it would go that route as well. But that should be very rare. And the security deposit creates some pain when you're not careful. Yeah, I think that should be a very rare case as well, that one user is not responsive at all.
Yeah, regarding the security deposit, we have another proposal. But is it a proposal or a GitHub issue to make this kind of more adapted to the volatility of a market?
Yeah. And maybe we should rise it a little bit. We'll see. But yeah, the security deposit should better reflect the risk exposure. Because at the moment, that's a little bit a different topic, but with very volatile coins like RIN at the moment, or Bitcoin Rhodium as well, we have more issues that, yeah, when the price is moving against the buyer, then the buyer can just decide to never send the money, or the RIN, for instance, or the Bitcoin Rhodium, and lose the small security deposit, and the other peer, yeah, is basically losing a good trade opportunity. And to reflect this better, the security deposit should be higher for those coins which are very volatile, to cover this risk better. We will consider to raise the security deposit a little bit to make it more costly for a user who is just careless and is not responding, because when it's a trade without arbitration, then the other peer would end up in this reimbursement, and it takes more time. It's a little bit of, yeah, it's we want to keep these cases as rare as possible, and the higher security deposit will add more incentives for both traders to not be careless and to take care to get out the money.
Yeah, it must hurt that everyone plays along.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that maybe we can speak to finish about the advantage of this system, because one advantage that we said is that there is now 2x2 multisig, which is more private. Another advantage is that it takes some kind of risk of arbitration. So less trust in the arbitrators. Then it also makes, from my point of view, it makes the job of arbitrator a bit easier. So it will be easier to have mediators than arbitrators. So if we have more mediators, it's scalable, and then we can also discuss the issue of different languages, right?
Exactly. So at the end, I think it comes to scalability. When we get more users, especially in different regions, like in China, it will become very difficult for the arbitrator who is not speaking Chinese to handle such cases. And it's very difficult with the current system to give any anonymous developer or contributor in China the right for arbitration, because we don't know them. When he's a scammer and maybe plays well for the first few months, and then when there is enough trading volume in China and he can make an exit scam, basically that he's having a lot of disputes open and then colluding with one party and stealing the money. And yeah, there is no really good solution with the current arbitration system to make this really trustless, that we can give the right for being an arbitrator to a non-trusted person. At the moment, the arbitrators are trusted persons, where we are sure that they are acting honest and also they have quite a lot of stake in Bisq, so they have also an economic incentive to not hurt the project. But we cannot scale up with this. When Bisq is 10 or 100 times bigger, we need not only 2 arbitrators, we need maybe 20 or 50 arbitrators, and that will not work. And another problem is the arbitrator, when he makes the payout, he can make a mistake. Arbitrators are human, and when I was arbitrator, I think I made 3 times the mistake that I paid out to the wrong side. And luckily, they were always honest and paid back, and I tried them to contact them, and they always paid back. So it was never real damage. But in the worst case, and with altcoin, it's 1 Bitcoin. When Bitcoin is again $20,000, the arbitrator can make a loss from $20,000, and at the end, the arbitrator needs to pay it from his pocket because he made the mistake, and it's a part of his job. But it's when the arbitrator is earning for his work as a customer care agent, something like, I don't know, $5,000 a month, he will not do it when he's risking that he could lose $20,000 when he make a wrong decision, and that can happen. So the arbitrator need to earn enough money that he's carrying this risk. With that, the arbitration system will become very expensive. At the moment, the arbitrators are the only one who are earning anything. They are receiving the trading fees. And even in future, when the DAO is in place and everything, the arbitrators, as with the DAO, the arbitrators need to lock up a lot of bond, also a very high amount, or something like 100,000 BSQ, which should represent something like $100,000 or even more. And again, here, I mean, an arbitrator who is earning just a minimum, a small wage or get a small payment for his work, he will not do this, because why he should lock up 100,000 BSQ and getting paid $2,000 a month for work which is no fun at the end. It's not a funny work.
Because we speak about paying to arbitrators and paying to mediators, and not everybody have the DAO model in their head.
Yeah.
So when we speak about payment, it means
they're making a compensation request to the DAO and issue themselves when they get accepted in the voting. They issue BSQ to themselves, and that's kind of like a payment. And yeah, the mediators, they will be mediators are basically a classical customer care agent job. And there's not much risk, because a mediator cannot steal the money. The worst case, and a mediator also need to lock up our BSQ bonds. So when a mediator would collude with another peer and would behave incorrect, he will risk that his bond get confiscated from the BSQ stakeholders. And the worst thing I think what a mediator can do, that is here very, very carefully and not professional. And then the traders will complain that he is working sloppy, and then he will get also kicked out, that he cannot be a mediator anymore. So I think with mediators the risk is very low. So we can deploy mediators to anywhere, to anonymous mediator around the world, because they cannot create a lot of damage. And that's the main reason why we want to get rid of the arbitration system. The arbitration system cannot be really fully decentralized, and it stays for the whole system a risk when we have a centralized entity. And in the best version, when we see that nobody's using the arbitration system anymore, we will fade it out at some point and we get removed completely. But to not make a hard cut and force the users to the new system, we decided to add this transition, or this system where both is supported. When users really want to use it, it adds a lot of cost for the DAO, because the arbitrators, as I said, are expensive, and they will not do the job for probably not even $5,000, because when they risk, they can lose $20,000. Why should they earn? I mean, they would when they make one time a mistake, they can lose the money what they've earned over 4 or 5 months. So they will be expensive for the whole system, for the whole DAO, for the stakeholders. So we need to carry over this cost to the users who want to use the system. When users, for whatever reason, are not convinced from their mediation system alone and want to get this extra security, or I would not even say that's more secure.
I think that what we do now with the DAO is a bit what I said in the beginning. The DAO gives us a new option to use the DAO as a company. So if we go to the classical world, to the standard world, the arbitrators are a bit like the police, the court, and even the executioner. So they had some ability to execute their decision. When we go now to the mediators, and we go to a more standard company model, the mediators are customer support. And if you are unhappy with the customer support, you can go to a company, which is an entity, and the company can compensate you. So we switch from a very strong court model where one person does too many things and hence has high risk, etc., to a more company model.
Yeah, so convinced.
It's a matter of view, of course.
Yeah. I mean, the mediators are much more clearly customer care agents, but I would see that the executive power, which is at the moment in the hand of one entity, the arbitrator, that this moves to the stakeholders, the Bisq or the BSQ stakeholders as a community, and anybody, it's an open system, anybody who has BSQ is a BSQ stakeholder and can participate in the voting, and it gets distributed to that group, and they make a collective decision if you should get the reimbursement or not. And I think that's a big improvement to distribute basically this power role to the DAO.
Okay, that's I mean, in general, that's what we do with the DAO. We distribute the lots of decisions to a community. So it's not one person that does it. It's now a community. And that's another thing that we do here, another decision, the execution, which we distribute to the community. Is there some kind of a rough expectation to where this new mediator system would be added? I mean, no fingers crossed, you know. Manfred?
Yeah, so it's depending on the DAO. So we have to launch the DAO first, and hopefully we can launch the DAO in around March. And in the best case, when we finish everything and when the DAO is stable, we need to wait a little bit until the DAO is stable and the price of BSQ is also a little bit stable at least, because otherwise when there's huge volatility, it gets complicated with converting the amount in the trade to the BSQ value and so on. I assume 1 to 2 months after the DAO launch that we can roll out the new trade protocol. It will be a kind of like a hard fork, so users who are not updating to the new version cannot trade with users who have updated, because it's mainly a technique or a resource decision. First, we thought maybe we can support both in parallel. It would be just a nightmare from development side and will add a lot of work and risk, and we want to fade out anyway then the old trade protocol. So it would be just a lot of effort and risk for something which would be only used maybe for 2 or 3 months until the most users have updated to the new version. And to make this decision to update easier, that was a main reason to avoid that people are scared of the new system and prefer to stay with the old system, and their trade protocol would basically split in 2 versions, or in 2 forks. We decided to leave the arbitration system with 0 fees at the beginning. So when we see that most people still want to stick with this system, we want to give them enough chance to find confidence in the new system and then slowly increase the fee, and then see, bring them to the point that nearly nobody is using it anymore. And we try to really to make it cooperative with our users, of course, because we don't want to lose our users when they are kind of like feel that we are forcing them in a direction and they don't want to use it. I mean, that we are depending on our users, so we want to be careful that they really understand it. But they really have to understand the arbitration system is the biggest problem in the current model. We need to get rid of this at the end. Otherwise, Bisq can never be really fully decentralized. And this new model, I think, is the solution for this.
Okay, so for anybody who wants to continue this discussion, I think that our Slack or the GitHub issue is a place for it. Christoph, before we wrap it up, are there any more questions?
There was just a question from Raimondas regarding cooperations, because Open Bazaar and Bisq has a lot of things in common. If there's any kind of cooperation between those 2 projects, as far as I'm aware, we talks or communication. There are some parts that are similar, but I mean, the cooperation I'm aware of.
There have been maybe a little bit more synergy in the earlier days. And I mean, the concept of the trade protocol is very similar with the multisig and deposit and arbitration. They call it mediation. And I think the politics have changed quite a lot, as they were much on this fork train the last year and added Bitcoin Cash and many other coins, and they're a company, they have investors and so on. I think the spirit of the 2 projects are quite different, in my opinion. The technical basics and the conceptual basics are quite similar. yeah, that's my conclusion. I mean, there's not much cooperation or whatever. Sometimes we talk a little bit, but I think on the political side, what was going on over the last 2 years, especially with the fork, when Bitcoin Cash was forking off and all these problems in that year, there have been many projects have also went in different directions, and yeah, I think that's the situation.
Yeah,
Okay.
there are not any more questions as far as I see.
Okay, so thank you very much for Manfred, Christoph, and Steve for beginning this session. I hope it was interesting. It was a first touch of a new topic. Probably it will be mentioned a few more times before it goes live. Okay.
Yeah, cool. Thanks a lot, Naiman, for hosting it and guiding the users through this new topic.
Gladly. Okay, so good night to everybody, and see you next growth call, which is next Thursday in the same time, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
See you.
Good night.
Bye-bye.
Bye.